UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber. UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber.
Surf Excel නම් භාගයයි මාසයකට වඩා රිදි සෝතයි.
Tonight, in for the long run. The World Bank says it is keen to push its new 5-year recovery plan for Sri Lanka.
That strategy is going to be very important because it shows how the bank will pivot to the new world, the post-COVID world.
Upping the ante, Lanka IOC announces a surprise price hike for petrol and diesel. Taking to the streets, the TNA announces an island-wide signature campaign to repeal the PTA.
The definition of terrorism is not changed. It's very wide and vague. Anything and everything can be brought under that.
Farewell to a legend. The world mourns the passing of Indian music great Lata Mangeshkar. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Sunday, the 6th of February, 2022.
Vegetable විසඳන no fried rice. අලුත් රෙසිපි දැනගන්න missed call එකක් දෙන්න.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Ekanaika. Now then, World Bank Country Director for Sri Lanka, Faris Hadadzervos, released a statement today on his recent visit to the island and discussions held with the government. He revealed that talks on removing bottlenecks in ongoing programs were successful and expressed keenness to further the World Bank's new 5-year strategy to help Sri Lanka recover from the pandemic.
Issuing a statement after a series of meetings with government ministries and agencies, World Bank Country Director Faris Hadadzervos says that the bank is keen to further its assistance to Sri Lanka as part of a new 5-year strategy to help the island recover from the pandemic.
I'm here once again in Colombo to move forward our very productive discussions with the government of Sri Lanka on a number of key issues. I'm very happy to say that over the COVID-19 period, which was difficult for all of us, myself and the teams have been able to come here at least once a month because it was very important to signal to the people of Sri Lanka, the government of Sri Lanka, civil society, that the World Bank has been and continues to be your trusted partner in this very difficult period. I, along with my colleagues from the World Bank, managed to have excellent discussions across the ministries and to have a meeting chaired by the Secretary of the Treasury to look at our existing portfolio of projects and our future pipeline and identify bottlenecks that we need to work on together in order to ensure that the projects move forward. We also looked at the future pipeline and had excellent discussions with private sector, government, civil society around our new country partnership framework, a strategy that is going to cover 5 years into the future. That strategy is going to be very important because it shows how the bank will pivot to the new world, the post-COVID world, that not only Sri Lanka but the rest of the world inhabit. And to see how we, as the World Bank Group, all arms of the World Bank, can bring all of our resources, human, financial, and technical, to bear in order to help you in the recovery out of COVID and to put us back on a path towards green, resilient, and inclusive development.
The Lanka Indian Oil Company has decided to raise its fuel prices by between 3 and 7 rupees, which will come into effect from midnight. Accordingly, a litre of LIOC 92-octane petrol has been raised by 7 rupees and will now cost 184 rupees. In addition, the new price of a litre of octane 95 petrol is 213 rupees after the price was raised by 3 rupees. Further, the price of a litre of auto diesel will now be 124 rupees following an increase of 3 rupees. Meanwhile, the price of a litre of super diesel will also be increased by 3 rupees and the new price will be 162 rupees. Now, the Ilange Tamilaruskachi parliamentarian M.A. Sumandiran says that a countrywide campaign has been launched to gather signatures in support of the repealing of the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Sumandiran also calls the government's proposed amendments to the PTA worthless and insufficient to ensure fairness to suspects detained for long periods.
Ilankai Tamil Arasukatchi parliamentarian M.A. Sumandiran held a media briefing yesterday where the subject of the government's amendments to the Prevention of Terrorism Act was the main focus. Sumandiran pointed out that the proposed amendments remain insufficient and brings about no changes to the issue of long-term detention of suspects arrested under the Act's vague definitions of terrorism.
Today, a new amending act is being brought, which is worthless, useless on the paper on which it is written. It makes absolutely no change to the PTA as we know it. It merely makes detention period 12 months instead of 18 months, but we know of no one who's been released because they have been in detention for 18 months. Before that, the person is produced before a magistrate and indefinite remand is ordered, and we only know people who have been in prison without being released on bail for over 18 years. There is no change that will come about as a result of this. The definition of terrorism is not changed. It's very wide and vague. Anything and everything can be brought under that. And so we have started a countrywide signature campaign calling for the full repeal of the Prevention of Terrorism Act. We started it on the 3rd of February, on the day last year when we commenced our long walk from Pottuvil to Polihandi. Because there was a fishermen's protest going on in the last few days, we temporarily halted this, but from today onwards, we are reigniting this protest and we will come to all parts of the country. We want all political parties and organizations to support this campaign for the full repeal of the draconian Prevention of Terrorism Act.
Jathika Janabalawege parliamentarian Dr. Harini Amarasuriya called on the government to ensure political stability and policy consistency in order to overcome the country's ongoing crisis. She also touched on the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's recent national address and called on the head of state to present a detailed plan to address the crisis situation instead of excuses.
Speaking at a media briefing this morning, Jathika Janabalawege parliamentarian Dr. Harini Amarasuriya criticized the recent addresses by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, saying that other than excuses, no proper plan to tackle the country's crisis situation has been presented.
Now, both these speeches were actually raised quite a lot of expectations among the public as well as the international community, because in many ways we were hoping that through these two addresses, the President would be able to inform the public and also the international community of the government's position with regard to the very grave crisis the country is facing, and that the government would offer some kind of specific solutions. Unfortunately, in both those instances, what we found was that the President spent a lot of time providing excuses or justifications as to why his government has failed to address this situation. The President is no longer in a position to get away with just providing excuses. He needs to give proper directions as to what the government intends to do in the future, what specific steps it proposes to take.
Further, Dr. Amarasuriya also commented on the confusion regarding whether the government intends to get IMF support.
The Finance Ministry said that they have written to the IMF requesting assistance, and which was immediately contradicted by the governor of the central bank, who said that Sri Lanka is going to pursue a homegrown solution. Now, these kind of contradictory statements at a moment when we are facing an unprecedented crisis is extremely detrimental to finding any way out of this crisis, because one of the main things that the government needs to do is to ensure political stability and also coherence and consistency in policy. That is the only way that confidence in the government will be built up, trust in the government can be strengthened, and that locally and internationally we will be able to get support for government initiatives.
The GCE Advanced Level Examination for the year 2021 will commence tomorrow with strict adherence to health and safety protocols. Special mechanisms have been set in place by the government for candidates who are infected with COVID-19 and under isolation. The examinations will conclude on the 7th of March.
The usual tradition is that the GCE Advanced Level Examinations are held in the month of August every year. However, with COVID-19 at its peak during August last year, the exam was postponed by the government to February. Accordingly, the examinations will commence at 2,438 centres across the island from tomorrow and will conclude on the 5th of March. According to Commissioner General of Examinations LMD Dharmasenam, 345,202 candidates will be sitting for the exams for 2021. Of that number, 279,141 are candidates sitting the exams through their schools, while the remaining 66,101 are private candidates. With this being the second advanced level examination to be held under the COVID cloud, special mechanisms have been put in place by the government for candidates infected with COVID.
ආසාදනයට ලක්වෙච්ච අපේක්ෂකයින් අපි මෙතනදී සලකන්නේ ආසාදිතයින් හැටියට Taman ප්‍රථම වතාවට විභාගයට ලියන විෂයට තියෙන දිනයට දින 7කට කාලය තුල අපි ඒ අය ආසාදිත විශේෂ මධ්‍යස්ථානයකදී විභාගයට වාඩි වෙන්නට සිදු වෙනවා. අපි ලංකාව පුරාම ස්ථාපනය කරලා තියෙනවා විභාග මධ්‍යස්ථාන 29ක්. සෑම දිස්ත්‍රික්කයකටම විභාග මධ්‍යස්ථානයක් ඇතුළත් වෙන විදියට රෝහල් සහ අතරමැදි ප්‍රතිකාර මධ්‍යස්ථාන ආශ්‍රිතව අපි විභාග මධ්‍යස්ථාන පිහිටුලා තියෙනවා. ඒතර මෙතනදී මේ දරුවන් තමන්ගේ විභාගය ලියන දිනට කලින් ඒ රෝහලේ නේවාසිකව ප්‍රතිකාර ලැබමින් තමයි විභාගයට ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්නට ඕනේ. ඒ දරුවන්ට ඒ තමාගේ මධ්‍යස්ථානයේ වගේම කිසිදු බාධාවකින් තොරව විභාගය ලියන්න අවශ්‍ය පහසුකම් සලසලා තියෙනවා. යම් කිසි විදිහකට ඒ කාලය අවසන් වුණාට පස්සේ දින 7ක් තමයි දැන් සෞඛ්‍යාංශ මාර්ගෝපදේශ යටතේ ඒ රඳවා තබා ගන්න කාලය. ඒ දින 7 අවසන් වුණාට පස්සේ තවදුරටත් ඒ දරුවා විභාගයට වාඩි වෙනවා නම් ඒ අවස්ථාව තියෙනවා නිවසට ගිහිල්ලා තමාගේ මධ්‍යස්ථානයට යන්න. හැබැයි තමාගේ මධ්‍යස්ථානයේ විභාගයට වාඩි වෙන්නට වෙන්නේ අපි නිරෝධායනය වෙන අපේක්ෂකයින්ට සකස් කරලා තියෙන වැඩපිළිවෙලක් විශේෂ කාමරයක.
In the meantime, the Department of Examinations has published a list of special treatment centers allocated for COVID-infected students. Details on the officials that need to be contacted can be obtained from our website www.AdaDerana.lk.
We will see you shortly on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, the latest study by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases in the United States says that people with both natural and vaccine-induced immunity, termed hybrid immunity, can produce an immune response up to 25 to 100 times higher than normal as multiple arms of the immune system are triggered. As such, health authorities are urging COVID-infected patients not to shy away from getting the vaccine.
A study conducted in Portugal has identified that the risk of hospitalization with the Omicron variant is 75% lower than with the Delta variant. The study adds that patients infected with the Delta variant stayed on average 8.6 days in hospital, while with Omicron, that time reduced to 3.7 days. The study conducted between the 1st and the 29th of December showed that while 26 patients had died due to the Delta variant, there were no deaths reported among patients infected with Omicron. However, contrary to the study, here in Sri Lanka there has been a 45 to 49% rise in bed occupants in the country among COVID patients, a 10% rise compared to the past week. The Ministry of Health stated that a 4 to 5% hike in ICU and oxygen dependency has also been observed. In addition to this, daily COVID cases have stayed well over 1,000 for 1 week straight, and the number of COVID-related deaths have also risen by 10%. Health authorities believe that this is due to the increased transmission of the Omicron variant in society. A gene sequencing report published by the Sri Jayawardhanapura University reaffirmed this, showing that among 88 samples, 82 had returned positive for the Omicron variant. As such, how is Sri Lanka's current scenario different compared to the study? Sri Lankan health experts say that the increased number of hospitalizations and oxygen dependency has been seen mostly among people with incomplete vaccine coverage. The Chief Medical Officer of the Colombo Municipal Council, Dr. Ruwan Vijayamuni, said last week that patients at hospitals had either received only the first or second doses, or hadn't received the booster dose even after getting the second dose 6 to 8 months ago. Authorities say patients tend to ignore the thought of getting the jab or completing the 2-dose regime and getting the booster if they've been infected with the virus. However, countless studies and health experts have constantly emphasized that natural immunity alone isn't enough against especially the Omicron variant. A study by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases in the US shows that once people who receive natural immunity against the virus gets the jab, they are able to generate antibody responses 25 to 100 times higher than if they hadn't. Such a strengthening of the immune system is termed hybrid immunity by health experts. They believe that this is because the immune system then triggers not only antibodies but also memory T and B cells against the virus. As such, the Ministry of Health urges all people in the country to complete the 2-dose regime and get the booster dose as well. So far, 5,724,507 have received the booster dose in the country.
Now, health unions across the country announced today that they will launch an island-wide strike starting from tomorrow until the government provides solutions to a list of demands. However, the president of the Public Services United Nurses Union announced that they will not be part of the strike tomorrow as 4 out of 7 demands have been met.
Health unions in the country have announced that they plan to launch a strike across the island starting from 7 a.m. tomorrow. They stated that this is due to a delay on the government's part in delivering some of the demands made by health unions in the past and promises made by the government in response to such demands. Some of them are the delay to declare the health sector as a closed service, raise the special duty allowance to 10,000 rupees, and the delay in establishing a health administration service representing all health professionals. However, health unions say that the strike will not affect cancer, maternity, and pediatric hospitals, hospitals treating kidney diseases, and the Central Blood Bank.
ඒ ඉල්ලීමට පිළිතුරක් දෙන්නේ නැත්නම් ඒ තාක් මේ වැඩ වර්ධනය අඛණ්ඩව ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන බව ආණ්ඩුව අවධාරණය කරගත යුතුයි. ආණ්ඩුව හෙට විසඳුමක් දෙනවා නම් හෙට නතර කරන්න පුළුවන්. දෙන්න විසඳුම කවද්ද එදාට අපිට තීරණයක් ගන්න පුළුවන්.
However, President of the Public Services United Nurses Union, Venerable Muruthattuwe Anandathera, stated that the union will not support the strike. He stated that out of the 7 demands made to the government, 4 have received solutions. However, Venerable Muruthattuwe Anandathera stated that if the remaining demands are not addressed in 3 weeks, the union will too resort to a strike.
Analysts believe that the Colombo bourse would remain positive in the week ahead, even though increased investor skepticism over the country's economic situation could lead to volatility. The all-share price index ended in green on Thursday as the index crossed closed 1.42% higher at 12,762.60 points, but lost 0.78% for the week. Now let's take a look at what we can expect at the market in the week ahead.
We feel that the market will continue to have a bit of volatility next week as well due to the increased skepticism among investors over prevailing uncertain economic conditions. Also, we can expect more companies to release their December quarter earnings next week, including many retail favorite counters as well. So with that, there is a possibility that we can expect positivity in the market with improved investor confidence since last Thursday the market gained the positive momentum. Last week, we saw insurance sector largely contributed to the turnover, followed by transportation and food and beverage counters. So next week, we can expect that transportation sector will continue to perform well along with insurance sector and capital goods sector. Turnover is expected to remain at the same level as last week and retail participation is expected to slightly improve.
Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, one of India's most legendary and iconic musicians, Lata Mangeshkar, popularly known as the Nightingale, passed away today at the age of 92. With her death sending shockwaves of grief across India and around the world, the Indian government announced that both today and tomorrow will be declared days of sorrow as a mark of respect.
One of India's biggest cultural icons and a singer who defined music and melody for generations in India, Lata Mangeshkar, passed away earlier today. The music sensation was 92 years of age at the time of her passing. She had been hospitalized on the 11th of January after contracting COVID-19 and succumbed to multiple organ failure brought on by the illness. Mangeshkar's voice has rung out from television sets on crackly airways and from movie theatres for most of independent India's 3/4 of a century, making hers the defining voice of many generations and earning her the title the Nightingale. Born in 1929 in pre-independence India, Mangeshkar began singing in her teens and in a career spanning 73 years, sang more than an estimated 15,000 songs in 36 languages. She enthralled music-mad Indians with her lilting voice and sheer range, singing everything from patriotic songs to romantic numbers, both in films and albums. The world of Bollywood, where movies were unthinkable without at least 6 songs, and where everything from romance to grief was narrated with the help of a ballad, was where Mangeshkar cut her teeth and later made her name. Mangeshkar nevertheless dominated the Hindi film industry for almost 5 decades until the 2000s. Along with her younger sister Asha Bhosle, she also received India's highest civilian honour, the Bharat Ratna in 2001, and was awarded France's highest civilian honour, the Legion of Honour in 2009. Mangeshkar was cremated with full state honours at Mumbai's iconic Shivaji Park today and was attended by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The Indian government declared 2 days of state mourning as a mark of respect for the singer, starting from today.
Britain's Queen Elizabeth reviewed plans for her Platinum Jubilee celebrations with her private secretary in Sandringham in England as she marks 70 years since she acceded to the throne, making her Britain's longest reigning sovereign. Elizabeth became the Queen of Britain and more than a dozen other realms, including Canada, Australia and New Zealand, on the death of her father, King George VI, on the 6th of February in 1952 while she was in Kenya on an international tour. She has continued to carry out official duties well into her 90s, but has been little seen in public since she spent a night in hospital last October for an unspecified ailment and was then instructed by doctors to rest. This weekend's low-key event are a prelude to a more pomp ceremony to mark the Platinum Jubilee in early June. The British government has added an extra public holiday to the usual spring day off to make a 4-day weekend. And the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said today that the reopening of the country's borders to international tourists may not be far away, adding that the Parliament will debate the matter this week. Australia, which shut its borders in March 2020, has been going through a staggered reopening in recent months, allowing in only citizens and residents, skilled migrants, international students and backpackers. Morrison said that the government is looking forward to be able to make that decision to open up its borders and welcome visitors back to Australia again as soon as it can safely do so. He added that he believes that such a point is not very far away. Australia, which has nearly 95% of population aged 16 and over double vaccinated against the coronavirus and nearly 9 million people with more than 2 doses, requires all international travellers to be vaccinated or provide a medical vaccination exemption evidence to enter the country. By mid-Sunday, the country reported 43 coronavirus-related deaths, 28 in New South Wales State, 9 in Queensland and 6 in Victoria. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.